to a new session. In this session, what we're going to do, we're going to go one step further. When we say one step further, we need to understand something called company. What is a word company? And maybe something more related to stocks. Stock? Okay. Yes. So we're going to discuss about company, just joint stock company. But having said that, have you heard this word stock? Or even a joint stock? I shall explain this first to you. Now, as it says joint stock, that means as per dictionary, the joint stock is stock which is divided by number of shares, or a capital or amount which is divided by number of shares in a company. Now, a company actually is made up of the stock which is shared by many people. So, a little bit confusing. That means we give some stock, or we divide the stock or the capital of the company between various shareholders. So that is actually called joint stock company. Now, recently this has become a new style, or most preferred style of ownership, business ownership, and it really also is quite dominant at the moment, which is and it's around the world. Now, I want to take you through this, but before that, I think it's a good idea if I give you an example in a very easy way. Okay, let me take you through as what is a joint stock and how does it work in company works. Let's take an example. Let's say, for the sake of Jay, a person called Jay, he wants to start a hotel. He wants to start a small hotel, and the investment of the hotel is around 5 crore rupees. Now, Jay knows he has 2 crore rupees of his investment capital with him, but he still needs 2 more crore rupees to operate the hotel, first of all, to build and manage and operate the hotel. Now, where will Jay get his 2 crore rupees from? So what he does, he thinks of why can't I develop my company and have some people who will invest money in my company, in my stock, and then they can be the shareholders of my stock. Okay, let's make it more divided. So what Jay does, Jay took his 2 crore rupees, and that he wants to raise 2 crore rupees more. Out of 5, he has 3. He wants to raise 2 more crore rupees. To raise 2 more crore rupees, what Jay does, he actually makes shares, 20,000 shares of 1,000 rupees each, which makes 2 crore rupees. Now, there are 20,000 shares of Jay's company in the market for people to buy. Now, each value 1,000 rupees. So what's happening is that now everyone who purchases Jay's company's shares, maybe someone will purchase 1, someone will purchase 10, some will purchase 100, some will purchase 1,000. So anyone who's investing 1 lakh rupees may purchase 100 shares. That makes 100,000. That makes 1 lakh rupees. So on and so forth. People will join together and they buy the shares to invest in Jay's hotel. Now, what happens is, now Jay gets money. People have started investing in Jay's hotel. So people could not buy a hotel, could not make it, but they invested in shares in the Jay's hotel because Jay is going to use that in the hotel. And then he constructs the hotel, and Jay starts running the hotel, and then hotel makes profits, and then Jay gives us profits. The portion of amount of money that they had invested, that portion of the profit is given to people who actually invested the money. So what happened? Isn't it? They got returns, and these returns are called dividends. Now, they got this back because they invested, they trusted Jay when Jay was even starting a hotel. So they gave back, Jay gave back the money that he got the profit. So for 100,000, let's say if they got 5% profit, so they got 1,05,000 rupees. So what is happening this way? This way, it's win-win for Jay who got money, and it's win-win for someone who invested money and he got 5,000 rupees on top of his investment. I'm just taking an example. Now, Jay could do in 2 ways. One way, that Jay could open this up for general public, or Jay could have only for like 10 or 15 people who could invest 50 lakhs and 1 crore or 50 lakhs, whatever money they could join. So there are two ways. We'll come to that later, which is called a public limited company and a limited company itself. So we'll come to that, but the basic understanding of the concept of actually the stock company is it's actually with the shares, and that means the shareholders have they have the say in about what's happening in the company. They have a meeting. They have a meeting in a year. They give out their balance sheets, letting your shareholders know. Now, let's look at the tourism. Do you think we have something like that? Any idea? Think about it. Okay, I'll ask you to think at least two companies where you think in tourism would be working on the same principle or platform of shareholding. What about airlines? Yeah. How about Air India? How about Lufthansa? What about tourism in the firms? Have you heard of ITDC? Indian Tourism Development Corporation, and like Tourism Finance Corporation of India. So these are as I said, corporations or companies. These companies have got shares, and obviously they have shares of a value that has been put in the public. Sometimes government do that. Yes, they do that. ITDC seems like a government organization, isn't it? So they do also share, so the public can be a part of it, and then the dividends can be given to the company, to give the people who invested money in there. So now, the size of a joint stock company is quite bigger. So obviously, imagine we're talking about shares of 20,000 shares. So that means when you put the shares in the market, so obviously you're responsible for those people who buy your shares. You're answerable to them. That means your business must take right decisions, and at times they may be part of some decision making. So there is quite a lot of difference in joint stock holding, which is quite a bigger than a sole proprietorship. I told you, sole proprietorship or even a partnership. So because the amount of money involved is bigger, because the amount of what's called operations are bigger, and number of people who invest in a lot more than just a single or two people. So decision making becomes a little bit of hectic here, and a lot of protocols are to follow while you open this company, while you operate this company. This entity itself takes a lot of you can say knowledge and a lot of organized structure to do that. Okay, let's look at some of these features. What do you think could be the features of this company? Now, it's again, the first thing is it gets its legal entity. Now, I will give you one example because you may get confused over here, but I'll give you an example which makes it very easy to understand. Now, I have as myself, I'm actually a sole trader. So I have my own business which is registered on my what's called tax number. What do you call it in India? It's called anyways, it's on the tax number, right? So I have my firm. That means I'm a sole trader. Okay, so whenever I pay tax at the end of the year, I include that. It is part of my one tax. Okay, that's my responsibility. I'm running this business. It's my responsibility. I pay the tax for that. Now, same goes with the partnership. Again, so that organization, which is, let's say ABC, this ABC organization belongs to me. And I'm responsible for ABC business, which is I'm sole trader of that business. Now, then I pay tax. So the tax does not come separately for ABC. The tax comes on me, and then because what I'm earning I get from ABC, the tax comes on me and I pay the tax. That's one tax number that I have. Now, that is active for partnership as well as for your sole tradership. But for the company, it's bigger identity. Now, I also am a director in one of the company which me and my wife hold. Okay, we have a company. So we have a company now. In that company, now have a understanding of this, because as a company is a bigger identity. Company has got its legal name. I have registered the company legally on the business, and there's a tax which goes on company separate to tax that goes on to me. Yes. So company becomes an independent identity than to my business which I have separately. So I have my separate business, but I also have a company with my wife. Now she is a director and I'm the director. We both are directors. So I pay tax as a director, whatever income I earn from the company. So company is actually identity which is separate of you. So regardless, you are a director, and then you may be, a CEO, you will be any position in the company. So that does not matter, because company has to pay its own tax. That means how much business did you do in a year, what were the profits, what were the losses. So that's separate to your own person. Let's say I'm a director, I took wages from this company, I have to pay tax on the wages that I took from the company as a director. So that's where even this company has shares. We have we have 100 shares at 50 is mine. So this is what it is. So that is a company which is private limited, which is not a company which is. We will come to that bit later. But again, now I was trying to give you an example of a company versus a sole trader. Here I have one business which runs as a sole trader. I have another business which is a company which is not my business. I'm director of that company. So when I pay tax, I pay tax individually as a business, but I also pay tax for my company. So so this is two different. That means company is a separate identity to you, as when you are when you have a company. So company has a different tax and you have to pay different tax. But when you're a sole trader, so it comes within your tax only. So I pay tax for my business, which is ABC, and I pay company tax, which is XYZ, name of the company. I'm not sharing the name, but I'm just telling you. Okay. Now let's take on further from there, as we were trying to look at what are the features of the company. So we understood that a company actually is a legal identity or a legal identity, but it has a separate identity which I should share. And obviously there is a process of instituting or starting a company. We have a legal process to do it every year. We have to demonstrate the tax, and also in terms of legal, I have to register my company, keep maintaining the registration to make sure that I'm following the government compliance. Okay, now obviously, because I was talking about public limit and a private, so we will talk about both. Now the share capitals, I told you I got 50 shares of the company. So what happens is, let's take another example, a bigger example now. In a company, as I was giving the example of Jay, we already understood that Jay has given 20,000 shares, rupees 1,000 each. Now Jay has raised 2 crore rupees from that company, right? Now because Jay has raised 2 crore rupees, Jay is liable, responsible to use that 2 crore rupees the best way so that company gets a profit, right? Now if anything happens, Jay has to take a decision. He has to make sure, keep in mind those people who were there with the Jay, so that those were shareholders, and Jay cannot take independent decisions as he used to take in our in a sole trader. Now Jay may have to have a board members to discuss before he took a decision. Okay. Now let's move further. In regards to another feature of the company is, sole trader. Let's again compare. Let's say if Jay has a company and I'm a sole trader. So anything happens to me, because I'm the one who's running the show, I'm the one who's a sole trader. So you might trade and my business goes with me. Anything happens to me as I said, I closed my business because I could not manage. Done, finished. Now, because I could not do that, right? Now, when it comes to company, so what happens is that is the entity, and you give someone else becomes a director. Company still stands. Now, this is what I want to tell you. You think Air India, the same director would be there in Air India from last 50, 60, 70 years? Now, a person cannot serve for 70 years, isn't it? The next person comes, but Air India is still there. You get my point? That is exactly what it is. It's never ending on succession, it keeps on moving. Okay? Shareholders. I will come to the shareholders a little bit later, but before that, I want to tell you about directors. Let's say any director, he retires, death, or cannot manage the funds or whatnot. But the companies, it still stays. So unless the company is actually liquidated, otherwise company they still they still go on and they manage. Okay, now when the company is incorporated, so obviously as it's a legal process. So in a legal process, same as partnership or sole trader, but the company have a sole traders and partnership has a unlimited liability. Remember I told you, if you have a partner and your partner has only 25% share or has a 75% share and you have 25% share, you paid you back your, if company goes down, you paid back your 25% on the losses, but your partner did not pay 75% losses, going to come back to you to ask to pay the remaining 75%. Wherein in a company, a very limited liability. Yes, company has a very limited liability as compared to partnership or sole trader. Obviously, company is a separate identity, just not to forget. Now, another thing, let's say you are a sole trader or you're a partner, right? So I have, if you're a partner, I have another partner and I have 25% stake. So my stake remains 25%. It's not easy or it's not transferable. Like let's say if I want to give my 25% to person C, I said, okay, you take my shares and I'm going out. No, you have to seek the consent of other person A if he wants to do business with person C or not. But you see that? So let's say a partnership within two people, one paid 75,000 rupees, one pays 25,000 rupees, A paid 75, B paid 25. Now B says, I do not want to work with you anymore. I want to go on. I will ask the person C to pay me 25,000 and then you work with person C. A says, hey, I have to see person C if person C is a good person to work with me, otherwise he will give me losses. Even though you're bringing a person, but it has to be consent. So a little bit of not an easy way out, but in a company, it's a separate identity. Jay has given 20,000 shares. Now, when Jay gave 20,000 shares, I took out of 20,000 shares, I took 1,000 shares. Now, it's my choice. It's freely. I can sell those shares. When I saw Jay's share values, instead of 1,000 rupees, the value is 1,500, I sell the share to anyone. I can freely sell those shares. I don't have to ask permission from Jay. Okay, so that's a good part of your company organization. So obviously there is a process. How do we do the shares transfers and whatnot? So that's exactly which has been covered in Companies Act, obviously, which is Companies Act 1956, and in terms of partnership, it's partnership governed by Partnership Act. Now let's look at what are the different kinds of companies. I was talking to you about public and private limited company. So the first thing that I was telling you that the company that I hold or I'm a part of is actually a private limited company. So what is a private limited company? So PVT Ltd in the end, that's called private limited company. So obviously this is held and owned by shareholder who must be minimum 2. That's why it's between me and my wife. So minimum 2 members are the shareholders of the company that we can have. So that's why we have a private limited company between me and my wife, which is a separate entity. I will not share the name, but yes, this is how that's a legal entity. Now there is a process of setting up this company, and there is legal requirements and paperwork to be followed when you actually set up this company. Not only that, when you operate this company, you cannot the shares for this company, which I've got 100 shares, 50 is mine, 50 is my wife, you cannot sell the shares to anyone else because it's not for general public. It's private limited, only for those members who joined that company in the initial, who started the company, stays with them. Now obviously you cannot go to stock exchange. So what is stock exchange? Okay, now that's just what I want to share with you. So what happens is, let's take example of Jay again. Now Jay had to raise 2 crore rupees. So Jay could do this, number one, because Jay has to have minimum asset, and Jay has to have some background in the business to be part of the stock exchange. So stock exchange is a platform where people can actually sell and purchase shares. The companies can list themselves, hey, this is who we are, and this is what our company is, and this is what we are bringing in shares. So they take government permission, government allows them, sees the criteria of stock exchange, and they enter to join the stock exchange company because obviously they have a bigger size to join a stock exchange, and they have to have background and listing, because anyone and everyone cannot list in stock exchange. So someone who's listing in stock exchange has to be a big enough company, has to be a good quality company who is registering on stock exchange. Now, what is a stock exchange? It's a platform. So let's make it more easier. When you okay, let's put it this way. If you have to buy something, right? Earlier, you used to go to buy stuff in the vegetable market, in the fruit market, or wherever. Or if you want to buy a mobile phone, right? Earlier, you used to have you go to a mobile shop to look at the mobile, and you go and buy the mobile, right? Now they have online platforms, right? Online platforms like Amazon. Go online. Facebook. Go online. What is it called? eBay. Go online, isn't it? You go online. Anyone go online and have the money, pay the money, get it, stuff. So, stock exchange is an exchange that you can sit online and actually go and you see the shares. You buy the share. You have to open an account called Demat account. So you open an account, and then from this account you can pay and you can buy the shares. Now, it's a platform where you can buy and sell the shares, and companies can list themselves. Okay, so that's where it's for the stock exchange. So obviously, as a private limited company, I'm not eligible because I'm not as big enough, and I'm not that level. I don't have that much, don't have background in this business. I cannot be listed, so my shares cannot be done on stock exchange. Okay, let's look at another one, which is very, very bigger companies called public limited company. So it's private and public. That means now this is open to public. What is the difference? There is confusion over here. A public company or a public sector, which is government-owned company, but I'm talking about public limited company. It's another business, which is a pure business, which is a private business, but they can actually be on stock exchange, and they can sell their shares to public, right? Now, Jay was a private limited company. Jay was smaller. If Jay was bigger, and if he had to go to a public limited company, that means Jay would have had a big background already, follow the rules and regulations of stock exchange, and then be able to come on the listing of the stock exchange. So make it simple. So public and private limited company. So public limited company is a company which has a listing on stock exchange. Private limited company do not have a listing on stock exchange. Public limited company can sell the shares to anyone, every general public who is able to purchase and buy through stock exchange. The private limited company cannot sell and buy shares to general public. Okay, only between those. So I think this will make you clear and understand that how things are different in terms of a public and a private limited company. Obviously, what happens is that a public limited company has a bigger capacity. They can go and source money from various entities. When I'm saying entities, I'm not just saying shares from people. They could also go to bigger banks and institutions. They can, obviously, they have a stronger hold on the shares. Now, I think we should need to now look at the advantages of a public limited company, isn't it? Now, obviously, in a public limited company, the shareholders have very limited liability. As I said before, they're transferable. That means today I have shares for a company. Let's say I have shares for Air India, and I saw the rate is going high. I sold share to some person B, and now I don't have any more ownership of the share because of that ownership goes to that place. If I look at it, if this ball is here on the back, if I divide this ball into small squares, so every square is maybe 1,000 rupees or maybe some shares. So now today my name will be here when I am in charge of that square. When I pay to someone else, my name goes up, someone else comes in. So that's exactly what happens in terms of ownership transfer. Okay. Obviously, what happens is in bigger companies where public limited companies are there. So there are big board members who sit for the board members meetings are there, and then there are managers and corporate houses. They sit together, they take decisions because decisions are huge and bigger. That's why we need skilled people who are really there to manage these companies, get onto profits and get things done. Now, obviously, there could be some disadvantages also. So I think let's look at the disadvantages. Now, as I was saying, it's a huge and big size, so there's a little bit of less flexibility there. And obviously, when the size is bigger, flexibility is less, there could be some issues in the managing of these organizations. Obviously, those people who were involved in terms of starting this organization, so I'm not talking about 1 crore rupees, maybe I'm talking about 100 crore rupees, 150 crore rupees, or maybe 200 crore rupees. When you're talking about 200 crores or 300 crores or 500 crore rupees, so that means you're talking big investment, isn't it? So when there's a big investment, so you need, and obviously it's a bigger organization, you need many people to manage the company. You might be sitting one place, but then again you need people to manage and control, right? Now, the issue comes over here, those people who are the biggest shareholders, stockholders, or the owners of that part. Because how many square, if I hold maybe this much portion of this total company, if I hold 50%, so 50% is with me, so I'm holding a shareholding of 500 crore rupees. If I'm a shareholding of 500 crore rupees, so obviously I may not be just sitting over there and taking everything, so I may be hiring people to work under me and help me to take decisions and whatnot. So there are managers who take decisions, and the managers, they just come and get paid. So obviously the ownership is separate and the control is separate, because managers are managing the show. So there's a little bit of difference in inflexibility. Well, there are rules and regulations, but then that's something which really comes as a flaw, because remember now, let's go back and look at our sole tradership. You are the only person, you are the decision maker, and you do the things. But here You have to take care of all those shareholders you have and board members. They may agree to what you say, they may not agree. And then there's managers who have skills and been running the companies, and they say, no, this is legal requirement, this is what we can do, this is what we cannot do whatsoever. Okay, so that tells us about how public limited and private limited company. But there's another company name which is called multinational company. Multinational, more than one nation, right? Okay, as the name suggests, obviously they operate more than one country. They operate in several countries. Do you know any such organization in tourism? Anyone? Have you heard of international hotel chains, airlines? Yeah, isn't it? Okay, so good example would be airlines. But more than airlines, I'll give you hotel. Which hotel run more than one country? Do you have Hilton? Do you have Hyatt? Do you know ITC, Marriott, Sheraton? So these are some of the examples of the companies which are multinational. That means they do not just operate in one country, they operate in more than one country. They may be registered in one country only. Okay, so there are a few more things I want to share with you. Number one is, there's another way that we can do other than raising the money through shares and capital. There's something called franchisee. Heard this name? Maybe. Okay, for those who are north of India, I'll give you one example. But anyways, I'll give example for everyone very soon. But for those who are north in India, in Delhi there was a chain called Nirulas. Long back, they had a lot of outlets. Now we have outlets like anything. McDonald's, isn't it? We have Subways. Now, what is this franchisee? We have hotel chains around the world. Well, in India itself. Okay, so what is a franchisee? Franchisee is actually, let's say Jay, he started his hotel. Now his hotel started doing a good job now. He started making money. But Jay said, well, I can do a very strong business, and our hotel is doing a very strong business and we have a very good team. Why don't we open another hotel? Now, Jay thinks, rather than opening another hotel, why don't I create my brand, because I've done a good job. So my brand is XYZ brand, and I expand in different cities. And people who really want to invest in hotel, I will help them. If they take my name of my hotel, I'll tell them how to run a hotel, how to start a hotel, how to manage a hotel, and how to get profits from a hotel. Isn't it good? But you should be able to invest money in starting the hotel. Only thing I need from you is a little bit royalty. What is it called? Royalty. A little bit money for doing all those things. You can use my name. You can say Jai's Hotel, let's say for example. So you can use Jai Hotel name. This is Jai Hotel. Jai Hotel Jammu, Jai Hotel Delhi, Jai Hotel Agra, Jai Hotel Bangalore, Jai Hotel Kerala. So what will happen? Jai will have his hotels different parts of India and maybe abroad. So Jai will help him in starting the hotel. So that's where there will be a contract, there will be agreement between Jai Hotel, which is franchisor, and a franchisee, the person who is taking franchisee. Okay? Now, obviously, as I was saying, that the franchisee has to pay franchisor. That means, let's say Jai Hotel Jammu is a franchisee, has to pay money to Jai, which is Jai Hotels Delhi, for sharing the name, for giving all the information, processes, systems in place, and obviously that's where we have international hotels brands coming to India, as I was giving you, Hyatt, Hilton, or even ITC, Marriott, Sheraton. Okay, now obviously there are costs involved. There are restaurants also, who is a franchisee restaurant. As I was giving an example of McDonald's, isn't it? There's another franchisee system that works over here. But do you think there's any other way, any other forms of organization that we have in India or anywhere? So let's look at, there are some other forms also in the tourism which is active, and let's look at it. Now, I will share a name, I think you might be very much familiar. Now, I'm sure you would know that in tourism, there are many A's of tourism. And when you say A's of tourism, we call it amalgam of A's, amalgam of tourism. So what are the tourism amalgams? Is attraction, accessibility, accommodation, ancillary services. So what are the A's? So if you have to go to a particular destination, which is attraction, there are many things required for the attraction to be successful. Let's take example, going back to my same example of Jammu. I know by now you'll see, where is the Jammu in India? Well, Jammu is the north part of India and it's part of India. I'm sure you know about it. So if I have a destination in Jammu, well, if there is a destination in Jammu, let's say I'll take the example of Mansar Lake. Now Mansar Lake is a small lake in Jammu, which is around 40 kilometers from the city and around 50 kilometers from Vaishno Devi, where 10 million visitors they go. Now, that destination, which is a lake, is not owned by anyone. It's owned by the state, by the government, right? Now, what happens is that people who live around that area, they have started their own businesses because people start coming in and enjoying the lake. The government made all the infrastructure around the lake, and then people like me who went over there and we hired a place to run my restaurant. Someone is running a souvenir shop, so we pay government back. When someone comes over here to the zoo, there's a small zoo, and they pay some tickets, so government gets some money. But having said that, who plans these things? Isn't it? So someone has to plan. Someone has to make a policy. Someone has to make a structure. In Jammu, such things are done by tourism department. Yeah, so it's called Jammu and Kashmir Tourism. Right? So that's a department of Jammu and Kashmir Tourism Department of Jammu and Kashmir. They actually work on it. They make policies, they plan, they promote, and I believe you've done that in your same thing you have done in your I think in TS1 Unit 5, Understanding Entrepreneurship Management. So maybe you can go and have a further understanding on that. Now there's another part which you need to understand, is called Tourism Development Corporation. Now this Tourism Development Corporation is actually a commercial profit earning organization like Indian Tourism Development Corporation, ITDC. Now obviously there are like state also, Jammu Kashmir Tourism Development, JKTDC. You may have buses also, JKTDC, MP Tourism Development Corporation, Rajasthan Tourism Development Corporation. So they have hotels, they have other accommodation services, tour guides. I still remember I went to Bharatpur Sanctuary, Wildlife Sanctuary. So I did see that there was proper office there. There were people over there to what's called promote and to take the tour guides and whatnot. So yeah, but there are also other we can say organizations such as local bodies, maybe a local municipality. Like I still take another example of Jammu. We have a very good new flower. Let's say, what is it called? It's a huge flower bed, which is run by government department of which it's run by municipality and some department. I actually do not know, but that has again linked to tourism. So that's another one destination for tourism. Then there is there's a border. There's a Garana Wildlife Sanctuary, which is there at Araspura. So what is it happening? So local bodies they take into look at the attractions and try to build on those attractions and help local communities to work on that, and they again make profits. Now last but not the least, we will be talking about cooperative societies. Again, they work on some members of the group of people who really work for development of their trade or development of their skills. Let's say if there's craftsmen, if they're musicians, if they're restaurants, hoteliers, so they work and they again they market the products to tourists, and they are cooperative. They run maybe some cooperatives also run accommodation services also. So there are different ways that that we have different businesses or other forms of organizations that are involved in terms of doing a business. So let's go back and see what did we do in this unit and what did we learn from this unit to understand and recap, maybe in a you can say in a short while. Okay, so we started with the company and we understood the joint stock company. We understood the example of Jay. We looked at the different shares and how it works, and we understood about stock exchange as a platform, and we gave example of various shareholders in terms of organizations such as Air India or Lufthansa, and we did talk about ITDC, and then look at various features in terms of how shareholders work, and how a company works, and how a sole trader works, and how company is different than the company has identity and which is different than a person, maybe director changes goals, whatnot. We talked about private limited company. I gave you my own example of my own company, and then a public limited company, which is a big organization, and they work on stock exchange and they exchange shares and whatnot. And then we look at disadvantages in terms of inflexibility and in terms of decision making by managers. And then we also spoke about multinational companies like Hilton, Hyatt, which operate in various parts of the world. We did talk about franchisee, and we example like McDonald's. Yes, I give example Norolas also, and also the hotel chains. And then we had different forms of organizations that really work in terms of tourism, hospitality, and especially in terms of businesses. Now, I believe with all this information that you have gained so far, it'd be very interesting to see that you develop now, start researching and see what can we do further from here after understanding these things. With these words, I will thank you for attending this session, and have a good luck. Thank you.